Hello, everybody. I hope that you are staying safe and healthy. We are running out of in-studio interviews. I'm actually recording this on the floor of my parents' closet. So you're going to start hearing more that may have a bit lower quality than what you've come to expect from this show, but we promise that we will continue to give you the highest quality interviews possible, and we hope that you'll continue to hang out with us. We appreciate your patience so much, and we also just want to say thank you to all of you who have shared this podcast with your family and friends, whether on social media or through word of mouth. Thank you for every rating or review that you've left us, every kind piece of feedback that we've received. It all really means the world, and we love the community that this podcast has created. If you want to be even more involved with this podcast, please be sure to follow our Instagram account at allin.podcast. Scott Sonnenberg now has many people's dream job as an NBA executive, but even before that, he had achieved his dream of playing college basketball. So you might assume Scott is one of those people that everything has always just come easy to. But 6 years ago, after 3 years of fighting to save his marriage, Sonnenberg went through a very painful divorce. He recalls struggling to eat or sleep, but today he looks back and can see purpose in his path. Scott Sonnenberg is the Chief Global Partnerships Officer for the LA Clippers. Previously an executive with the Chicago Bulls, Scott has nearly 20 years of experience in prospecting, negotiating, and closing partnerships across the globe with some of the largest companies in the world. But more importantly, he is a husband and a father. This is All In, an LDS Living podcast where we ask the question, what does it really mean to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ? I'm Morgan Jones, and I am honored to have Scott Sonnenberg on the line with me today. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I am so grateful, first of all, that you are willing to do this. I think that the experiences that you have to offer will be so helpful to so many that will listen to this, and possibly many that have felt alone at times. And so thank you so much for being willing to share your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've learned that through this process, many have gone through similar situations, and it can be tough to talk about and tough to navigate through. So hopefully I can provide a little bit of help along the way.
Yeah. So first of all, Scott, you have spent much of your church service working with the youth, which I find interesting because you told me in an email that you first met the person who would later hire you at the Chicago Bulls your senior year of high school. Tell us a little bit about kind of Scott, the teenager.
Well, as a teenager, I was a handful. I'm one of 5 boys. And for any mother who's raising all boys, there's a special place in heaven for her because it takes an extreme amount of patience just to keep us alive. So being one of 5 boys, I was the middle child. So every stereotype they say about the middle child was true with me. I loved the attention. I was the tease. I had my 2 older brothers that they would beat up on me, and then I would dish it out to my 2 younger brothers. We were all very, very competitive. I just remember growing up, watching my brothers play basketball, watching my dad play basketball, thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to play basketball. I want to be great like them. And they pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. And that's really what helped instill within me a desire to play basketball and to compete. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, I grew up outside of Chicago in a town called Warrenville, which is right next to Wheaton, Illinois. And in Wheaton, I had a great group of friends. They were born-again Christian friends. They had strong values, good people to be associated with. Obviously, their beliefs were different than ours, but they had good, strong values. And I think what helped instill within me a desire to learn more about the gospel and to strengthen my own individual testimony is because of the constant questions that I was receiving from my friends outside of the church. They would ask me questions about what I believe and why I believe certain things. And And as a result, it challenged me to study and learn more. So my upbringing was fantastic. I grew up obviously loving basketball, it being a large part of my life, but then growing up in an environment surrounded by friends who had good, strong values and morals, not necessarily of my faith, but of the same type of character. And
I think that's so interesting that you touched on. And I think many people that are listening to this podcast will be able to relate to this idea of when you grow up somewhere that you are the minority as a member of the church. It often requires that you figure out pretty early on what you do believe. And it kind of leads to this searching. And I think that's something that people in certain parts of the country will really be able to relate to. I know I grew up in North Carolina, so that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
As you went on, you played a year at BYU, a year at UVU, and then at San Jose State. Is that right? Basketball?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It was always my dream growing up to play basketball at BYU. That was always what I had hoped to accomplish. I was able to play there in '96, and then following that year, I served a 2-year mission in Las Vegas. After returning home, I transferred to Utah Valley, which was a junior college at the time, and then on to San Jose State to finish up basketball. I played 3 years there. I had a medical redshirt year in there, but finished up playing at San Jose State, and then moved back to Chicago shortly afterwards.
And Scott, while you were at San Jose State, the school newspaper wrote an article about you and your then wife, and the title was Faith and Family Centerstage in Athlete's Life. Why do you think that caught the attention of your school, like at large?
Great question. People looked at me as different. I was not your typical college student. I was a returned missionary. Obviously, faith was important. That my teammates knew that on Sundays I was in church. I wasn't hanging out with them. The parties, the college parties that you see, you wouldn't find me at those. And my first year at San Jose State, I even had some of my teammates say to me, "Hey, how come you don't come hang out with us more?" They just thought it was odd. And so, but that was something that I was used to, regardless, having grown up in Chicago, the west suburbs of Chicago. But it never deterred me from who I knew I wanted to be. That lifestyle was never really a part of my life. I had values that I had instilled within me all growing up. And when I got to school, a non-LDS school, and was playing basketball, I was perceived as a little bit different. In fact, my first year at San Jose State, I was single. I was dating a little bit. And then towards the end of the year, I met my then wife. I went back to Utah for spring break. We went on a few dates. She ended up moving out to San Jose. And over the summer, we dated, got engaged, and got married within just a short period of time. So I remember coming back my junior year to play basketball at San Jose State. And I'm sitting there it was like a basketball welcome meeting with all of my teammates and family and friends. And I'm sitting there with my wife. My teammates didn't even know that I had gotten married. I stand up and introduce the woman sitting next to me as my wife. My teammates all turn around thinking, what in the world happened over the summer with Scott? So I think, they perceived that I was on a different path, but they respected that. I loved my teammates. Keep in touch with many of them today. And they respected the path that I was choosing, and they honored that. They never pushed me to do things that I didn't want to do. And so when the school paper came to me and wanted to do an article, I was captain of the team at the time, wanted to do an article about my life. As they interviewed me, they came to realize that really faith and family is at the center of everything that's important to me. And that's what the article was about.
I love that you touched on the fact that your teammates kind of just respected who you were and didn't. And that's been my experience as well, is that when we are firm in who we are, people kind of just accept us for who we are. And to the point that many times, I'm sure you can relate to this, I've had people be like, "Oh, Morgan doesn't do that." And I think that's admirable in terms of the people that we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I've learned from a business standpoint is when you are working with people that they look at you as someone with integrity, they want to do business with you. And I think it's helped me tremendously in my career and helping me move up the ranks within my career. It's helped me in building relationships with clients because they know that what I say is my word. And that's in large part due to the fact that I am a strong member of the church. In fact, when I had started with the Chicago Bulls, it was within my first year that I was in the midst of negotiating a big multi-million dollar deal with a company out there. And our owner of the Bulls, Jerry Reinsdorf, as we got talking, somehow it came up that I was at BYU and that I was a member of the church. And he turned around quickly. He was in the front passenger seat. He turned around quickly and he said, "Wait, you're a Mormon?" And I think the conversation was going to go from there. I was hoping and praying that he had good experiences with Mormons. And he said, and I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "One of my business partners that helped me all throughout my real estate career, which really helped him earn the money to buy the Bulls way back when, was a member of the church." And he said that members of the church are some of the strongest, most faithful people that I've ever worked with. And it's great to have you on the team. And so I thought, oh, thank goodness he had a good experience. But people have always looked at my faith as being what makes me, and and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. I think it's cool too when you have that experience where people are like, "Oh, I've had a positive experience with other Latter-day Saints." You're like, "Oh, thank goodness that those people were good examples." And we all kind of become this collective whole in that moment. And so I love when stuff like that happens. Okay, Scott, we're going to have a little bit of a spoiler alert right now because you just talked about how you met your then wife. And so for those who are not familiar with you, we're going to be talking the rest of this episode about divorce and the marital issues that you experience and the things that you've gone through since then. But up to that point, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like your life had pretty much gone the way that you had planned.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very goal-oriented, basketball being such a large part of my life that really helped instill within me to set and accomplish goals. And so I had a checklist. It was play basketball at BYU, go on a mission, be sealed in the temple, be a good father, be a good husband, be a good priesthood holder. It was check, 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 check. And I felt really confident on the path that I was on. Absolutely.
So then when things started to kind of go south in your marriage, how did that rock your world?
Well, it did. It rocked my world tremendously because I didn't see it coming, to be honest. And I know my ex-wife would agree. We had a good marriage. We had a good relationship. We have 4 kids, and we had a good, healthy home. And I knew some of the struggles that she had previously, and she's been very open. I certainly wouldn't share anything that she wouldn't be comfortable with me sharing, but she had a difficult upbringing, not having a father in her life. And she looked at me as someone that filled that void for her, someone who was that provider, that caregiver, that person that would, love her unconditionally, a void that she had all throughout her life. But because I filled that void, she perceived me as, that father figure instead of that companion, so to speak. And again, she would be very open about in sharing this. So that was hard. And we went through years of counseling, trying to get to the root of this and try to build a closer connection and closer bond. But it was difficult. It was a trying time. Definitely the most difficult period of my life. Prior to that, my parents had been through a divorce shortly after my mission. And when my parents went through the divorce, I thought, well, I'm never going to do that. I am never going to go through that. And then there I was, in a situation where I was faced with the same thing. And what I came to realize is that, in a marriage, it's not a one-way street. If you both have to be on the same page and rowing in the same direction, it doesn't matter, if how hard you're working or what you're doing, you've got to both be putting in the effort if it's going to work.
Yeah. Scott, for someone like you that had been successful and very goal-oriented, how did things not working out in your marriage affect your self-worth? And how did it make you feel that people perceived you? Did you worry about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I worried about that. I even, from a business standpoint, my business is very much about building relationships with clients. And I love to bring my family around them. I was, again, family's been such a crucial, vital part of my life. And I was proud to bring my kids and my wife around. And I was worried about how my clients and how others, friends and people that I associate with would perceive me as a result. And that was hard. That was hard. And you do feel a little bit like you want to explain things more, but you have to be sensitive to the fact that not everybody's going to understand, what went on in our relationship. And it's not fair to give bits and pieces of what went on. You just have to have the confidence that people know you and they know who I am and they know what's important to me and they know, what my values are and have faith that they'll draw their own conclusions based on that. Because you have to be very sensitive to discussing those things, be sensitive to the relationship.
Yeah. Scott, what are some of the other emotions and challenges that are associated with divorce that people who haven't gone through it might not be aware of or might not consider?
Oh, well, divorce is, it takes a tremendous toll on you, physically, spiritually, emotionally. We went through about 3 years of counseling and trying to keep the marriage together. And I was a fighter. I was going to, continue as long as I possibly could. The talk that continued to ring in my mind. I love listening to old talks, and some of my favorites are from Elder McConkie. And Elder McConkie, in one of his talks and talking about eternal marriage, said, the most important decision that you'll make in your life is to marry the right person in the right place at the right time and by the right authority. And that continued to ring in my mind. And I thought, this is like life's purpose. And I've failed. I failed at that. And that hurt to think that I've failed at that. And what I came to realize as I contemplated more and more on that is, it's not necessarily that I failed at that. I put my whole heart and soul into everything, into the marriage and into everything that I've done. And if that's the result, then that's what I have to live with. And I have to have confidence that the Lord has other plans for me and has a better path for me to take.
Yeah. Scott, how do you, in a situation like this, how do you prioritize your children while also making sure that you're taking care of your own needs? Because you add children into the mix, and I think that makes things even more difficult.
Yeah, the kids have always been at the forefront, and it's difficult when you're trying to balance a career, your time with your kids, and then also trying to have some type of social life. And early on, I overdid it. I overcompensated as a result of the divorce. In fact, my wife still teases me when shortly after the divorce, the kids would come over. I love to cook and I love to bake. And I always wanted to have home cooked meals for the kids when they came to the house. And our custody arrangement is such that the kids stay with me for a week and then they stay with their mom for a week. So during their weeks with me, I wanted to make sure that they had great home cooked meals and treats and all sorts of stuff. And so I said to the kids early on, I said, guys, we're going to have dessert every night after dinner. And the kids are all excited. And yeah, that lasted for a little while. And And when we don't have dessert nowadays, the kids will bring that back up and say, "Hey, Dad, remember the time that you told us that we were going to have dessert every night?" And my wife looks at me like, "I can't believe you told them that." But it's, you have to make the kids a priority, but you also have to, like you said, you have to remember to take care of yourself, and you can't do everything. And then in addition to that, being married and having stepchildren as well, you have to make them an equal priority. And even with my kids, and now that I'm married, my wife is my number one. Our relationship is most important, and as that falls into place, the relationship with my kids falls into place. They see what a healthy relationship, what a healthy marriage looks like, and then with the co-parenting with my ex-wife, we're on the same page to ensure that the kids are getting the love and attention that they need, and with all the different activities and all the different things that they have going on. But it's important to never lose sight of the fact that you have to continue to take care of yourself, especially spiritually, during that transition. That was a hard transition for me in entering into life as a single dad. That was a difficult period, but I think keeping your spirituality at its highest is the most important to carry through it.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about that spirituality, because I do want to get to your current family and marriage. But before we get there, I think it's important to talk about some of the ways that something like this affects one's faith. And the thing that I always think, I'm not married, but I always think if I were in that situation, I think I would struggle with thinking, why didn't God stop me? Or why did I feel good about marrying this person? Because we're a people that seek confirmation from God. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting in your email to me, you mentioned that you're preparing a stake conference talk on personal revelation. So what have you learned about answering those questions, like why doesn't God stop us from going through hard things? Or why do we feel good sometimes about things that end up not working out?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a question I really, really struggled with during the divorce. I remember very distinctly, we were living in San Jose, and I went to the temple. I was fasting that day. I went to the Oakland Temple, went through a session, and then sat in one of the sealing rooms and offered up just a heartfelt, sincere prayer, asking if this is the person I should be sealed to. And I received a definite yes, without a doubt. I knew it. And so I went home later that day, and my then wife, we talked about it, and we started making plans. And then I proposed a little bit later. And so so then fast forward all these years later, leaving the courthouse following the divorce, the first place I went to was back to the temple. And of course, this was in Chicago. And I sat there in the temple, and my question was, why? Why did this happen? I felt like I was doing everything right and being a good father and husband and priesthood holder, and I had a hard time with that, and I didn't understand it at the time. And I didn't get an answer right then and there. I think the only thing that kept coming to my mind was be patient. Just be patient. There's the talk from Elder Hubie Brown. I love listening to these old talks. Elder Hubie Brown gave a talk called "I Am the Gardener Here." And in that talk, he talks about this bush that was chopped down, and how could you chop it down? And it was growing and it was thriving. But then, the gardener knew that it would be best to chop it down, because if it did, then it would grow and reach its full potential. And that talk continued to ring in my mind as well. I just didn't know what my full potential was at that time. Now, here we are 6 years later, and I can see that everything happened for a reason. everything absolutely happened for a reason. And I received to go back a little bit, I received a blessing shortly after my divorce from a very close friend of ours, someone who had known me all growing up. And in that, he told me that, and of course I had gone on to be sealed to my companion, but in that he said that the Lord had a purpose for me. And after that blessing, he pointed out the fact that this is how it was always meant to be. Don't question that. The fact that I went through, the divorce and ended up with my eternal companion, the companion I have now. We were sealed in Nauvoo. You think, well, how could that be? Certainly the Lord doesn't expect you to get married just to be divorced. But I had full faith and confidence in the fact that this was the Lord's plan for me. And I can say that now because of how my life is right now and how happy I am. And I know what a healthy marriage feels like and a good home. But it took time. And I think that's what people need to understand is it takes time to get to that point. And so the only thing that came out of the temple shortly after my divorce is just be patient. Just be patient. And in time, it'll become more clear. And now it has become more clear.
Scott, when you look back on that and that period of your life, what do you feel like you did learn? Like, how did that experience make you stronger or refine your faith and strengthen your relationship with God?
It made me rely wholeheartedly on the Savior. I had to put all of my energy, every last ounce of it, into the Savior to get me through it. I mean, it was a difficult period when I was going through the divorce. I was losing weight. I had a hard time eating. I couldn't sleep at night. And then on top of it, the callings I was given during that time, I was an early morning seminary teacher. I was the young men's president. I had these callings, these very time consuming callings. And I think it was the Lord's way to say, hey, I need you focused on me. If we're going to carry you through this, then I need you focused on me. And so I didn't have time to cry myself to sleep because I had a seminary lesson to prepare, or I had a young men's activity to prepare for, or I had young men that needed me. Even when I was called as young men's president, that was in the middle of my divorce. I even said to the bishop, "Are you sure you want me in this calling? I'm supposed to be the example for these boys, and I'm going through divorce." And he said, "The Lord wants you to be young men's president now." And so, all of those things just brought me closer to my Savior. And and it goes back to when my parents went through their divorce and how much I relied on the Savior to carry me through that, and the constant trips to the temple for strength, the extra long prayers and studying my scriptures and doing all those things that I knew would strengthen my relationship with Him, because that was and is my sure foundation, that foundation that is immovable. Regardless of everything that's happening in my life, that's the one thing that I could always rely on. And what I noticed during that period of time is I felt like there was just a special conduit to heaven for me. I felt like the Lord really knew me and what I was going through, because they were answers that would come much more clearly than I think than I've had in other situations. Sometimes when you pray and you seek revelation, it's hard. It's hard to understand what the Lord's trying to tell you to do. But I feel like when you're going through these trials like this, and you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, there's just a special conduit to heaven where you feel like the Lord is really there. He's really listening. He's really giving you answers. There were numerous experiences that I had. There were very vivid experiences that the Lord was telling me to do things. And it really felt that He knew me and He knew what I was going through and was there to help.
Yeah. I mentioned to you, Scott, that my friend recently went through a divorce in a similar situation as you, and he he helped me come up with a few questions. And I thought these questions were so good and likely will be more helpful than anything that I could come up with for those that are listening. But one thing that's unique to our culture in the church is this idea of an eternal marriage versus a marriage just for time. And that's something that we talk about so much in the church. And one question that he had was, did the trauma of losing your eternal marriage affect you spiritually? How did you navigate that? And what advice do you have for others going through it?
Great question. For me, and everybody's different in their own situations. I think for those that have friends that are divorced or family members or whatever are going through it, the number one thing is be careful not to judge. Everybody's path is different, and people learn differently, and people learn through their own mistakes. They learn through the mistakes of others. And so it's the number one is it's important not to judge the circumstances that people can find themselves in. But as it relates to your question, because of that sure foundation that I've always had in the gospel, and I think that comes from my testimony and obviously serving a mission and doing those things. I never thought this isn't for me, because I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing and it didn't work out the way I thought it was supposed to work out. I never questioned my testimony. I never questioned my faith. I questioned why some of the things happened in my life the way that they did. But in an answer to that, the answer that I received was just be patient and things will start to unfold, and they have. And so, but it never really affected me in a sense that my testimony was faltering. And in large part, not only because of how I'm grounded, but I've got 4 children, that I wanted to teach them and continue to teach them how important the gospel is and how the gospel can carry you through tremendous, tremendous trials in our lives, as it's carried through me, through mine. And so not only did I need to be that rock for myself, but I needed to be that rock for my kids, where they could look at me as an example of someone who's gone through this, and to continue to make sure that they're at church every week in their activities, and to be following up on their scripture study and all the programs that the church has. Those were all very, very important to me in keeping me grounded.
Scott, I think it's so important. One thing that, as I thought about your situation and also my friend's situation, I think it's so important for all of us who observe these types of situations not to make assumptions. And I'm curious, as a man, if you ever felt like people made assumptions about the reasoning to why your marriage didn't work, and how do you navigate the balance between telling people what happened in order to feel understood while not oversharing and keeping confidences and trust with your ex-wife?
Yeah, no, good question. I go back to the fact that I have to trust that people around me and know what my true values are, know what my principles are, know me to the core. I don't think I necessarily felt judged by being a man, so to speak, in a divorce. I know a lot of people looked at our situation and thought, well, I didn't see that coming. Same way they looked at my own parents when they went through the divorce. Well, we didn't see that coming. And so that's hard, because that's just again, for someone who has had faith and family at the center of their lives to go through a divorce, you think, well, that's not supposed to happen. And that was a struggle for me, but that was something that I just had to work out. I had to work that out myself and realize, hey, yeah, it happened. And it's all about where you're headed. My grandfather used to always tell me and tell everybody that he'd come in contact with. He'd say, it's really all about where you're headed. It's not necessarily where you've been. And I always have felt like I've been on the right path and continue to be. And I just had to have faith in that and not worry about what other people may perceive or what people may think of the situation.
Yeah. Another question that my friend had, Scott, was our culture seems to know how to handle a spouse's death or divorce due to reasons like infidelity, but sometimes these more complex situations can cause the person going through them to feel isolated. And so he said, what advice do you have for someone who feels alone while going through a divorce for unique reasons that are hard to explain?
Yeah, especially in our culture, I would sit in primary or sacrament meeting and hear families can be together forever, and I would just cry. And you hear so much about how the adversary is, the families are the target, and that's true. What I had to come to understand is that yes, families are absolutely a target, but specifically in a marriage, it's a two-way street. You've both got to be on the same page if it's going to work. And families are are central to our Father in Heaven's plan. But all families are different. Some are blended families like mine. Some are single mothers trying to do their best with their children. Some are single fathers trying to do their best. Some are a couple that can't have children. And some are the stereotypical perfect, relationship with husband, wife, kids in the home. Every family is different. So yes, family is central to our Father in Heaven's plan, but there isn't one size fits all for families because that may not be possible in certain situations. I know as a single father, I was doing my absolute best as a single father and was raising my kids. And I felt where I lacked, my Heavenly Father helped make up that difference. And I feel like when we're doing everything that we can, the Lord makes up the difference. And now I'm blessed to have an amazing, amazing companion who is at my side and is there helping with the kids and caring for them, and is an amazing wife and mother, and now we're a team. We're a team, and that's my family now. But she was a single mother for a period of time, and so every situation is different. And it's hard to not look in the mirror and say, well, my family doesn't look like that one, because we don't know what kind of trials families are going through. I think you have to just focus on what you can control and what your family situation is right now, and let that be your focus. I think when we teach about how families are central to everything that we believe in, it's about your family, whatever that family may be.
Scott, I am a sucker for a good love story, so I need you to tell us how you met your wife.
Well, we both went through divorce at about the same time. And coming out of the divorce, we didn't know each other. We were both living there in Chicago. My wife is originally from Mexico City. And coming out of the divorce, I had put my whole heart and soul into everything and trying to keep the marriage together. And once we realized that this wasn't going to work, and once the divorce was final, I hit the ground running and I was ready to start dating. My wife, on the other hand, didn't have any interest in wanting to date. And so shortly after our divorce, a member of my stake presidency, who's now the temple president in Chicago, came to me and he said, my daughter is serving the primary presidency with a young lady that I think you should meet. And she's got two young boys, and he showed me a picture, and I said, well, yeah, I definitely would like to meet her. And it was a few months later that we were supposed to meet up. Now, my wife had no interest in dating, and so she had to be tricked into being introduced to me. And the way that her friend did that is she said, hey, did you want to go to a Bulls game? And my wife, my now wife, she said, oh, well, sure, I'll go and bring the boys with. So we had it all planned out, and we were going to meet up. She didn't realize that she was being set up. I mean, here's what's interesting is I got really sick that day, and we didn't end up. And so I had to call our mutual friend and say, I'm not going to be able to make the Bulls game tonight. So, this isn't going to work out. So she ended up going to the game, us never having really met. and realizing after the fact that she was being set up, and said, I would have never wanted to go if I knew I was being set up. So that first time that we were supposed to meet, it didn't happen. Now, fast forward 8 months later, and I was dating. We never met at that first moment. I was dating. I had been in other relationships. She had now just started to date and get comfortable dating again. And then our paths crossed officially. And I immediately went up to her. It was at a stake activity for her stake. She was in the neighboring stake, the Joliet stake. I was in the Naperville stake. We met at an activity, and I talked her up for a good hour. And she wasn't really interested. My wife she's so humble and so sweet and kind. And, the thought of, I was the vice president of the Bulls at the time. And in her mind, she thought, well, vice president of the Bulls probably means big ego. And I don't know if I'm going to be interested in that. And so I really had to pursue her to get her interested. And eventually she gave me the time, and we were able to go on a few dates, and she realized, oh yeah, I'm an okay guy. And we hit it off. We hit it off after our first few dates.
So then what is your blending of families? What does that look like if she had kids and you had kids? And then there's that factor you mentioned earlier, custody agreement. So how does all of that work? How do you balance all of that?
It is a balance. Yeah. So the way our situation works is, with my kids go back and forth 1 week at a time. She's got a little bit set up with her kid's father. But the blending of the families occurred really over a period of time. Once we were dating for about 6 months, we felt it was time to introduce the kids. And so we met for ice cream once, and it was something very casual, and for the kids to kind of get to know each other. And they're all about the same age. Our kids range from ages 9 to 15. And so, and there's 6. So they're all tight in age, and they all just kind of clicked. And over a period of time, we would do more and more activities. Then on Fridays, they would come over, and then they'd come back on a Saturday. And sometimes we'd go to church together on a Sunday. And that lasted for a good year. And then it got to the point where our kids would say, or my kids would say, Dad, we're tired of saying goodbye to Vanessa and the kids. We're tired of saying goodbye to them at night. And that's when Vanessa and I realized, oh, okay, we're all ready to take the next step. And then it was a short time later that, we made all the preparations to be sealed in Nauvoo. And that was just an incredible day. And to see all the kids and to see how happy they were. And, it was just a real blessing. And I could really start to see why everything happened the way that it did.
What does your family mean to you now? Having gone through all of these experiences, what does your family specifically, and then just family in general, mean to you?
Well, family again is everything to me. My kids, my stepkids, my wife, that's everything to me. That is my biggest source of happiness, is when I'm with my kids. That's always that's the toughest part about divorce, is not being able to be with your kids as much as you would hope. But I've noticed that when I'm doing things with my kids, when I'm doing activities, when I'm cooking with them or baking with them or doing anything, that's when I'm happiest. That's when I'm enjoying life the most, is when we're doing things together. Our time together, because it's split, I really try to take advantage of every minute that we have together. Every weekend we do something fun as a family. Every weekend that we're together, and then of course the various activities. I've got a great co-parenting relationship with their mom, and so there will be things that come up, and can I pick up the kids to take them here during her week? And she'll say of course, and she'll say, can I pick the kids to take them there? And I'll say of course. And so we've got a very good relationship. And my ex-wife, she lives less than a mile away. And so the kids can really go back and forth, as they choose. And so we've got a good relationship in that sense, which is healthy. And it takes time to get to that point. also. I can imagine some people are maybe listening thinking, well, I haven't heard too many situations like that. It takes time, and it takes time to heal. Those first couple of years were really, really hard coming out of the divorce, and it hurt a lot. And I realized that the longer I hang on to this pain, I'm just not going to be able to recover. My heart's not going to be able to recover, and I need to get through this. So, it takes time, and everybody goes at a different pace. But I feel like now the place that we're at in our co-parenting and the relationship that we have and relationship that we have with our kids is in a healthy place. I take their mother into consideration in a lot of the decisions that we make. When we all made the decision to move to Los Angeles, the first call that I made was obviously to my wife to see if she was open to it, which, being from Mexico City, she was absolutely on board to moving to sunny California. And then the next call was to my ex-wife to see if she would be open to relocating, which she was very excited about the possibility. So, it's a challenge, and yes, we don't agree on everything, but you work through things because ultimately you're a family.
Thank you so much that you shared so many things that I wouldn't have considered. So I really, really appreciate that, Scott. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. As we wrap up, the last question that we always ask on this podcast is, what does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
I think for me, to be all in means that whatever you're going through in your life, whatever your situations are, whatever your circumstances are, continue to make the Savior the focal point. Continue to turn to Him. That's what has carried me through some of the most challenging times of my life, and continues to carry me today. It's about keeping the Savior at the center, and that relates to how you live your daily life, how others perceive you, how they look at you, the kind of example that you're setting, how you're parenting. Every facet of your life should reflect the Savior, and know that trials inevitably will come. I think that was difficult for me to realize, because I thought, well, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then maybe I won't see the same kind of trials that others have. That's not necessarily true. We could be doing what we're supposed to be and still have tremendous trials placed upon us. And I've certainly seen that in my life. And as we put the Savior first, know that He will carry us through that. And I think that's what it means to be all in.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for giving of your time. It means a ton.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
We are so grateful to Scott Sonnenberg for joining us on this week's episode. As always, thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to Derek Campbell from Mix It 6 Studios for making us sound good. Please stay home and stay safe. We'll be with you again next week.